Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a long morning for me. Hope you're all dry. It's just started raining outside. Um, this week's Parsha is Parsha Tazria Metzora, and it's deep and definitely not an easy Parsha to understand. I'm going to just highlight a very specific part of the conversation that takes place over these two parshiot. The idea of speech is central to so much of Jewish thought and belief. We are very particular about the words that we use. And we ultimately believe that speech is the form in which God used to create and sustain, maintain the universe that we live in. And if our job is to be those that emulate the divine, then we need to do everything we can possibly do to ensure that we sanctify our speech. Parsha deals with this illness called sarat, which is spiritual leprosy. Okay, in biblical terms, it afflicted those people who spoke something called lashon hara, literally evil speech. And most people are, under the impression that lashon hara is speech that contains fabrications, things that are not true and false. But remember, all evil and derogatory talk falls under the category of lashon hara, even if it's true. Now, the Torah regards that this sin of lashon hara is so disgustingly heinous. It's so evil that those who were guilty of it got a special disease called sarat. Okay, it's a skin disease called sarat. And since this was a spiritual ailment, there were physical manifestations, it's true, but it affected the outer skin, and its nature was, its core issue came from the soul, and therefore that individual had to go and meet with the high priest, Aaron HaKohen, or his descendants. They were not physicians. They did not go to the doctor to get, physical healing. They went to a spiritual guru. And the question that we have to ask is why the person has to be brought specifically before Aaron the Kohen, Aaron the high priest. Why him? What was so special about him that enabled him to examine and cure the individual who spoke lashon hara? Okay, good question. Why? Just send him to the doctor. Let him go to a dermatologist, and we'll take care of the issue. Now, lashon hara, evil speech, by nature creates divisiveness. It generates animosity and contempt. It forces the people to divide themselves. It is antithetical to harmony and well-being. Whereas Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the priest, was an ohev shalom and a rodef shalom. He was a lover of peace and a pursuer of peace. And therefore, everything that represented him was the antithesis, the exact opposite of negative speech. Now, what would he do? He would go to these two people that were fighting and say, your friend, he really regrets this altercation, this fight that you had. And as a matter of fact, he reached out to me to approach you on his behalf because, he loves you and wants to make peace with you. He said, really? And he would do the same thing with the other guy. And this was his message. He'd go and create peace, to appreciate the awesomeness of who Aharon was, that after his death, okay, the Jewish people stopped and mourned for 30 days, non-stop for him, much more so than they did for Moses, their beloved leader. Throughout Aaron's life, he was determined to create all sorts of ties to bring harmony and love to the broken families and the fragmented relationships that are out there. When Aaron died, everyone mourned for him. Everyone had been touched by his awesomeness because they realized that the gift that they had with him was irreplaceable. He brought connectivity, love, understanding, and patience. Maybe now we can appreciate a little bit better why Aaron's descendants were assigned, designated to bless the Jewish people through Birkat Kohanim, right? We say, that there's a special bracha that flows through Kedushat Aaron, through his family, right? With love, ahava. What is the holiness of Aaron? It is the total devotion and commitment that Aharon felt for each and every Jew, a commitment summarized by one little word is ba'ahava, with love. It's Aaron's love that is a unique hallmark of his descendants. And it is that love that is the most vital qualification for giving over a bracha. There are those who would justify speaking Lashon Hara by claiming that they are just being honest. I'm being forthright. I'm telling the truth. We hear it all the time. It's the truth. It's the truth. But Aharon taught us that there are times when the truth has to take a back seat. We cannot dare to put our other people into shame. We can't go ahead and worry about not being super sensitive about other people's wants and needs. We have to do the specific laws of giving honest information concerning shidduchim and business and partnerships so that people aren't misled. But even in those kinds of cases, we have to know how to phrase our words, right? How are we able to reveal information, right? That's positive and not negative. Okay. Lashon Hara is such a serious infraction that there are 14 positive commandments and 17 negative commandments when it comes to Lashon Hara. The great sage Chavetz Chaim, he warned that Lashon Hara is the most destructive of all sins because it destroys people. We see this in our generation, how in politics, how in our society, how words end up destroying people's lives, their careers, their families. Now, God taught us a very beautiful thing, right? We know that death and life are in the tongue. God created us in such a way that our own organs serve as a way to remind us to be aware of the potential danger inherent in our tongues, right? Everything that we have, either our eyes, our ears, the kidneys, the heart, everything there is to teach you something. They all are external, but the tongue is the only organ that is both internal and external. The eyes, the ears, the kidneys, the heart, it's either one way or the other way, but the tongue could be inside or outside. Okay? To protect it from misuse, God gave us two gates to guard it. One, our teeth, and second, our lips. Reminding us that before we use our tongues, we should shut the gate and carefully consider whether or not we should allow the tongue to speak. Or maybe it's better to remain silent and keep the gates closed. Pasha, Tazria, Metzora are usually read together. The word Metzora is a combination of two words, motzi, ra, meaning to speak evil of others. Okay, now there's no accident in the Torah itself. These two parshiot, Parshat Shemini, is very, very instructive because in last week's parsha, we studied that not only of the dangers of speaking Lashon Hara, but also about the forbidden non-kosher foods as well. By placing these two parshiot together, what we're being taught is that we have to be equally careful about what goes into our mouths and just as much of what comes out of our mouths. That kosher and Lashon Hara is one going in, one going out. We got to be just as careful. And since this is no small achievement, we have to be an equal guard of being concerned about how we use and choose our words. We pray to God to help and for guidance. We conclude every Amidah with the same words. May God guard my tongue. Hashem from all evil, my lips speaking from deceitfully. We want to be constantly reminded that we want to live in a world where we're using the right word. Lashon Hara is the equivalent of the three cardinal sins. Okay, I understand it's difficult to understand and to absorb, but in the 21st century, gossip is a profession. Okay, gossip is a profession in the generation that we live in. Newspapers, we have gossip columnists. You have gossip columnists. They have social, media. Okay, and these are people that we go to look for honest reporting and reporters today. Right? The biggest bestsellers, best books, best papers are all based on gossip. Our Torah laws are like a beacon of light that illuminates the path and reminds us of our higher calling. Speech is a divine gift given only to man. There's no other creature on planet Earth that has the power to express itself the way we do. To abuse that gift is to betray that trust. To what extent must one avoid Lashon Hara? We could learn it from Miriam, Hanaviyah, Miriam the prophetess, who in good faith she criticized her younger brother Moshe, and whose seemingly innocent words afflicted, she got sarah, she was punished. The Torah commands us to remember what happened to Miriam and to be cautious with our words. Even when we believe that we are speaking for the benefit of another, she just wanted to help her sister-in-law. And she got sarat. This shall be a law of the Metzora. A Metzora is someone who sins by speaking Lashon Hara. Interestingly, the word Torah is invoked 5 times in this regard. 5 times we hear this word, teaching us that it is that he who speaks evil about others is considered as if he transgressed all 5 books of Torah. Okay, how important do you think this idea of speech is? Right, you contrast this to like a childless rhyme, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me, right? There was a story I heard way back when from a friend of mine who would say that reality proves the opposite. To mend broken bones, you can always go to an orthopedist, but we can never go. How can you go ahead and mend a broken heart? Who can heal the scars of a soul? Words do matter. Okay, don't believe that you're bulletproof when it comes to the words that we use. They're real. They hurt. They're real. Now, this is the law of the Metzora. It's written in the future tense, teaching us that the feelings of remorse and a resolve to refrain from speaking the Shorah must be characterized the Metzora even after he goes through the purification process. Now, in a time of crisis and pain, it's easy to make commitments of teshuvah, but to maintain those commitments once the crisis has gone, healing that has taken place is a true test of one's sincerity. How can a person hold on to his resolve and keep his promises? And the answer is always the same. And it sounds like a broken clock. You know what the answer is? It's Limud HaTorah. Torah study is the best maintenance program to maintaining your balance in this world. When Torah study is undertaken with a pure heart, it elevates the soul, it heals, it protects, it does everything that you need. And God assures this. He says, I created the Yetzer Hara, but I created the Torah as an antidote. The Torah is the antidote. How do we bring it into our lives? You see, we are a little bit more than 4 weeks away, a little bit less than 4 weeks away from Matan Torah, right? We're there. What happened? God spoke. We heard his voice. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created heavens and earth. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem your God. These are God's voice. We live in a world where sound animates the universe. It's vibrating from God's voice. You, my friends, can connect to this. I'll end with the following story. I had a rabbi in Israel. His name is Rav Schwab, and he lived in Mattersdorf. And he had a neighbor who was super meticulous about never speaking Lashon Hara. And he was known to be one of the guys in the town who was very, very holy. And they say of him that whatever he asked for came true. Whatever this man said came true. Why? Well, if the whole purpose of the Torah itself is so that I could become godly, I could become godlike, maybe the mouth and the tongue, speech was designed to help us control the world, but we don't understand it, and therefore we lower ourselves through our poor speech. And therefore, here's a man who mastered speech and therefore was able to master control of the physical world as well. Any bracha this guy gave became true. That's the world God created for us. I'm not saying we're going to go into a reality where we're completely, stripped away of the urge to speak negative things. But the question is, what are we doing to bring this level of holiness, of insight into our lives, into our families? How are we making sure that we're using words that heal and not words that hurt? People are so fast to react and to express emotion without thinking about the words they're using. We're all guilty of it. This week's Parsha, as you read through it, my friends, just spend some time going through the commentary. It's profound. If you read this week's Pasha and you don't walk away thinking about how you can speak better, be more attuned to the right words. Rabbi Kiva's students, 24,000 died because of lack of kavod, lack of proper speech. This is the time to work on it. We're going to be walking into the world. This is the time to speak. How are we talking to people? What are we doing to elevate our speech? How are we becoming greater human beings? That is what this Pasha is about. And remember that in the process of your desire to improve your speech, you know what you end up doing? You end up having the power to create a universe, to create the world around you, and to make it anew, to make it a better place. It begins and ends with what comes out of your mouths. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom Mevarach. May we be blessed with the recognition that the power of speech is the power that controls everything. Our thoughts, our minds, our attitudes, our relationships, it all starts from here. Guard it, protect it, learn it, elevate it, and you'll live in a world of only bracha and hatzlacha. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.